Different populations of species interact together in what are called communities. Communities are all the species that live and interact in a particular area at the same time. A forest community, for example, includes all the trees, small plants, birds, mammals, insects, fungi, and microorganisms that live in it. One of the big questions that community ecologists work to answer is how so many different species can exist in the same location at the same time. We know that population size is impacted by resource competition, so it stands to reason that different species in a community also compete for resources. If the same rules for evolution work here, then there should be a fittest species that outcompetes everybody else. However, we know that this is not the case. One concept that helps explain how different species can coexist in the same area is the concept of the niche. A niche is an organism's adaptations, use of resources, and lifestyle. These niches are species specific and are, to different degrees, separate from the niches of other species. Ideally, the number of species in a community equals the number of niches, and all niches are filled. However, we do not live in an ideal world. Every species has what's called a fundamental niche, their potential niche that they will inhabit in an ideal world. An organism typically occupies instead their realized niche, a smaller subset of their fundamental niche. Species may not occupy their whole realized niche due to many factors, including competition, predation, or more and more because of human involvement. Competition is the fundamental struggle for members of an ecological community. Resources are always limited and they are in demand. If niches are well separated, then there'll be little interspecific competition, or in other words, competition between species. But there may still be intra-specific competition, which is competition between individuals of the same species. However, if there is overlap in niches, then resource availability and interspecific competition becomes a major issue. How are interspecific conflicts resolved? There are two possible outcomes. The first is called competitive exclusion, when two species that live in the same area compete for the same resource and one species outcompetes the other, causing that second species to go locally extinct. The other possible outcome is that both species alter their use of the resource to be able to share that resource. This is called resource partitioning. A great example of resource partitioning is the positioning of songbirds in trees. Trees are a limiting resource, but instead of one species of bird dominating the whole tree, multiple species of songbird use different parts of the tree to live in. In this way, multiple species of birds can coexist using the same resource. Coexistence can also bring about symbiosis, the intimate relationship between two or more species. Symbiosis can be beneficial, harmful, or neutral. Beneficial symbiosis is called mutualism. Both members of the relationship benefit. A famous example of a mutualism is the interaction between clownfish and sea anemones. The clownfish protect the anemone from parasites, and the anemone protects the clownfish from predators. Neutral symbiosis is called commensalism. One member benefits while the other is unaffected. Plants called epiphytes anchor their roots to trees. The epiphytes get more access to the sun, and the trees they are rooted to are neither helped nor harmed. Harmful symbiosis is called parasitism. Here, one species is benefited and the other is harmed. Ticks are ectoparasites that attach themselves to animals and consume their blood and can pass along harmful pathogens. Another set of interactions between species in a community are predation and herbivory. Each is the consumption of one species by another. Predation and herbivory play an important role in the evolution of their prey. Plants can develop spikes and thorns, leathery leaves, or poisonous or unpalatable chemicals to help deter herbivores. Animal adaptations against predation are also quite diverse. Many prey animals develop physical structures like shells to protect themselves. Some have chemical defenses and warning coloration, and some have developed camouflage to hide themselves from predators. Of course, herbivores and predators have also evolved ways to counteract those defenses. And this typically leads to a millenniums long evolutionary arms race between predator and their prey. There are sometimes particular species that exert a profound influence on a community. These species are called keystone species. Keystone species are often predators, but they don't absolutely have to be. Beavers, for example, are keystone species because they change water flow and habitat characteristics by damming rivers and streams. Keystone species typically are only apparent after they have been removed from a community, and their removal causes a subsequent loss in biodiversity that can be very dramatic.